despite what I'm about to do, I really do have respect for this classic, I swear, but, Now, I do have my reasons for these book crimes, because I'm going to show you how I can take this paperback and turn it into my own custom leather-bound edition of The Hobbit. So this just seemed like the perfect project to do because not only have I been itching to do some more bookbinding, but as some of you already know, I'm getting ready to attend an event called the Brandywine Festival, which is a Hobbit-themed live-action roleplay event, which is just a fancy way of saying a bunch of people dressing up and pretending that we're hobbits for like 5 days. But despite the fact that I'm going to like an official Middle-earth event, I don't actually know all that much about Middle-earth. So when I was browsing through a used bookstore and found this copy of The Hobbit, I knew it would probably be a good opportunity for me to actually read some of Tolkien's work. Because as of right now, my only knowledge of anything revolving around Lord of the Rings, unless you count the 2005 VeggieTales Lord of the Beans, which I don't think many people would. I had to look it up just to make sure it wasn't some weird fever dream.
Is this it?
Put it in the fire, Toto.
Huh?
Put it in the fire!
My only introduction has been the Hobbit movies trilogy. I became obsessed with these movies. I watched The Unexpected Journey so many times, all the production diaries and the cast interviews. I even watched the extended editions, well, at least of the first 2 movies. I don't think even I could sit through an extended version of 5 Armies. I think I might actually have something to help prove my point. This is like all stuff from like my high school room. Yeah, I wasn't like other girls with their One Direction posters. Nah, I had teenage heartthrob Bilbo Baggins on mine. I had this thing up for so many years. Look, I also have a little letter opener of Sting. It's funny because they call it a letter opener in the movie, so it's like, oh my god, it's so clever, it's so funny. I would say it's Warner Brothers Studios greed, but I can't even be too mad though, because this is actually pretty stinking cute. It actually wasn't until recently that I learned that apparently lots of fans did not like the Hobbit movies as much as I did. And I do think that is all the more reason why I should probably go back and read the source material to see why it is such a beloved classic, you know, also before I tear it up and put it back together again. Now, as many of you might know, it is not a long book, so it only really took me over the course of the weekend. Plus, I also just got invested in it really quickly. I even went outside because it felt more thematic. And while my backyard is definitely no grassy meadow of the Shire, it just felt right, and it also got me to go out and touch grass, so that's points for this story. Okay, I can now confirm. This is an absolutely just whimsical and delightful tale. I thoroughly enjoyed it so much. It's just so comforting and it's written really funny as well. Though I will say, going into it, I did know it was a lighthearted story. I did not know the extent of how much of just a children's story it was. Which I say not as a bad thing, just more of a, how the hell does this become Lord of the Rings? Lord of the Rings is such high fantasy compared to like in this one when they get to Rivendell and the elves greet them by singing a song and laughing in the trees that is described as pretty fair nonsense, dare I say. Thorin literally feels like a cartoon character in this compared to the normal, oh, brooding king under the mountain that I'm used to. I was caught so off guard in the beginning when Bilbo was like, hey, can you explain literally anything about what's happening right now? And Thorin's legitimate answer was, what? We just sang a song about it. Were you not listening? Anywho's, I can probably go on and on about this, but this is in fact a bookbinding video. So we should probably get bookbinding, which does mean tearing this apart. Okay, first things first is that we have to remove the cover. Before I go and dramatically rip it off, this version is printed with Thorin's map as the end page that is holding the cover to the text block. So in order to be able to preserve the original illustration for the next book, I'm going to very carefully perform a little surgery. My first attempt was with an X-Acto blade, but quickly realized that I was more likely to tear the paper than to separate it. So my next weapon of choice is the heat gun. That way I can heat up the glue and slowly start separating the cover from the text block. You know, it's a little late now, but I really hope that this isn't some like rare, super special edition of this cover. I think we're good. Though if this book was printed like the year that this edition was copyrighted, which is 1997, that would make this copy older than me. I mean, only by a year, but this technically has seniority on me. Well, here goes nothing. Oh, that was actually really clean. Okay, on to the next ones. Surgery was mostly successful and still have the map still intact. A little damaged, maybe holding on by a thread. So what I'm going to do is cut out a little sliver of paper and reinforce it. I'm actually going to use a little bit of this really thin double-sided tape that I have because I don't want to risk getting glue on the map. Now we have a little band-aid. And then from here, I'm going to make some new end pages as well. I do wish that I had a little bit more decorative or thematic cardstock I could use for this, but this forest green will work for now. And maybe I can add something later on. End pages in place, it's time to assemble my book press, which is 2 cutting boards and some wing nuts. Like a true professional. Now, for the most part, the glue from the original binding did stick, but some of it did start to peel off, especially when I was heating it up to remove the cover. So just to make sure that it's really secure, I'm going to go over it with another layer of glue. Also seal down those little band-aids that I made. And then also during this step, I'm going to, where did I put them? Where did I put them? I just had them. Oh my God, there they are. Put them all the way over here. Okay, I have a bunch of little colorful headbands to choose from. These are little pre-made strips I like to use because 1, they're easy, and 2, I still have yet to learn how to actually make a headband. I'm going to stick with a simple dark green to go with this book. Now I'm going to hit it with one more layer of glue. Most of bookbinding is just glue, I tells ya. Make sure that everything is sealed down and holds together. All right, so I'm just gonna leave that to dry overnight because I wanna make sure that the glue is actually nice and secure and does not fall apart as I'm trying to use it, but that also gives me plenty of time to work on the cover design. Now, obviously, there are already a ton of special editions of Tolkien's work from The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings series, so while of course I have found some examples that I've really liked online, something else that I think might be helpful that I also found at the bookstore, and that is a copy of the official The Hobbit Unexpected Journey Weta Studios art book. When I stumbled upon this, I got so excited. It is just chock full of just so many sketches of everything that they planned for the movie. From the Hobbit costuming to the set of Bag Ends, and just pages upon pages of concepts for like all the dwarves. And it's just so pretty to look at and fascinating to see them go like, what's the difference between a belt that the dwarves would use versus something that you would find in Rivendell? This makes me want to start collecting art books more, not only just because they're pretty to look at, but also just for references. I mean, especially considering right now Pinterest is so overflooded with just like AI stuff that I have to like look at something for a good 20 minutes to make sure that it isn't AI. It makes me really appreciate having a collection of well thought out and human-made art that I can use as reference instead. Also, speaking of things that I found at the bookstore, I also found these ancient things called Blu-rays. They had a whole little duct taped together bundle of all 6 of the movies, which is fantastic because I did want to watch these before the events and didn't want to have to deal with paying for a streaming service that may not carry them in a year, so physical DVDs, baby! God, do I have something that can play Blu-rays? I don't know. thumbnail sketch that I was pretty happy with, I did end up remembering I did have something that could play DVDs. That obviously has not been used in a hot minute. So after doing a little cleanup, I thought it'd be fun to do a little rewatch of The Hobbit while finishing up my design to see if it holds up or if I'm truly just blinded by nostalgia. Which, speaking of nostalgia, oh my god, a DVD start menu? It's been so long. Scene select. I'm saying this like it's the first time I've ever seen a DVD. Look, I did grow up with VHS tapes and then DVDs, but it's been a long time since I've actually seen one. It's a lot of things you just don't remember. And I will admit, I hardly ever sit down and watch movies, so this was actually so nice, deliberately going on my way to watch like an old movie I used to love so much for my own little personal movie night. It was quite nice. Alright, it is the next day. The text block has now dried overnight, and I am very happy with how it's holding up. The end pages are holding strong, and I think when it's glued to the cover, it's going to hold fine. Text block should be all good to go, so now I'm going to start working on the cover boards. And luckily, Unexpected Journey was just long enough that I was able to finish my cover design. Say what you will about all the extra stuff that they added. Right now, I'm grateful for it. I mean, not to go into a whole movie breakdown, I will admit, after watching The Hobbit after so many years, the scenes that I remember and that I really liked still hit. They still are so good.
Infested with parasites, it's a terrible business. I wouldn't risk it, I really wouldn't.
We don't have parasites! You have parasites! I've got parasites as big as my arm.
Mine are the biggest parasites. I've got huge parasites.
And it makes it even better now that I understand more of the subtle references that they were making to the book. But also, a lot of the scenes that I didn't remember, I see why. maybe those were not as needed. Anywho's. I am actually really excited how this final design came out. Well, I did go back and forth with like a couple of concepts of like, oh, maybe adding the Hobbit door and stuff like that. What I really loved was taking the original illustrations of Smaug and the Misty Mountain, not the Misty Mountain, the Lonely Mountain. That being framed by this border design, which I really like how it turned out because while I didn't take it directly from any of the patterns, I took a lot of inspiration from like the crisscrossing and very angular patterns of all the dwarves' clothes. And then I was even able to put the J.R.R Tolkien's monogram into the top because then I don't have to carve little letters of J.R.R Tolkien's name into the book cover, but I still get like his credit on there. Some of the designs is just going to be embossed, some of it is going to be highlighted with some gold leaf, and I'm really excited to get started working on it, which luckily, since I take apart so many books on this channel, I have some extra book cover boards. Specifically, this one is the back of the Dungeon Master Guide. So it's going from D&D to The Hobbit. That's recycling, baby! Okay, now that I know the size of my boards, I am going to take my lovely little sketch here and just like magic, turn it into a clean vector. I say magic, it took me 2 hours this morning. What is a little bit more magical? Quickly, the Lasercutter will cut it out for me. Long gone are the days of hand-cutting embossing. It's been clean and even, fits perfectly. This would have taken me so long to do by hand. Though I do apologize, I realize this is like the 4th video in a row where I'm just like, yeah, simple, easy crafting project. And then I go, and now to my expensive laser cutter, which I don't say to brag, but it's more of just to acknowledge that I know it is not an accessible tool. It just allows me to take one of my skills, which is knowing how to make cool designs in a digital space, and translate it really quickly to the real world to do cool stuff like this. Plus, I did my time. I cut all these things by hand for my previous books. It makes me appreciate it now that I can get cool stuff like this. Easiest embossing I've ever done. Which now means that I can move on to the leather. This is a really thin and stretchy 1.5 to 2.5 ounce Vegetan sheepskin, in case you are interested, which makes it really good for making these covers. Alright, I think this is looking pretty good. You know, actually like a book, so that's pretty good. Admittedly, with like the embossing and the leather itself, I wish it was a bit more neat. One side of the embossing went pretty well, and then the other side got like pretty messy. Unfortunately, the messy side is the front cover, and I can't change that, which is unfortunate. As of right now, I think that the text block fits pretty well into the book casing. Even though I've done several bookbinding videos on this channel, I still always struggle with how big to make the spine and make the hinges, especially when it comes to leather because it is a thicker material. Now, let's talk about how I'm going to do the rest of the design, because it's already been a process that I want to complain about. So originally, my first idea was to take the vector that I already made and turn that into a stamp. That way I could just press it onto the book cover and get my perfect design, perfectly clean, everything good in the world. On how to do that was to do it the same way that Martina from Nerdforge has done it in her recent bookbinding videos. Because, you know, what am I other than a knockoff version of Nerdforge? And I was like, I have a laser cutter, I have some leftover acrylic, this is going to be easy. Yeah, no, didn't work out. No, this is not salvageable from how I prepped the file to like just the design itself being way too complicated or too small. This is a good lesson of I need to remember to test and not just full send the entire design. Now I've just wasted some time and a sheet of acrylic and nothing to show for it. And then I was like, okay, well, if I can't do that, then I'll just 3D print the thing. That will be easy. I know how to 3D print. Yeah, that print also failed. See, this is why I always just stick everything to the base plate, because I never trust support. So creating a stamp, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to deal with it. So that leaves me with two options. One, to go ahead and carve everything by hand, which like, yeah, I could do it by hand. I don't wanna though. It's more of also just like carved has a very different look than something that is stamped. I also made the vector. I wanna use that. So that leaves me with the second option, which is just to use the laser cutter to engrave the design into the cover. I did test some of the elements of the cover on some scrap leather, and not gonna lie, it turned out real freaking good. Part of me feels like this is a bit cheating because I just can basically print the design onto the cover, but also at the same time, it is the quickest, the easiest, and looks the best. However, this can also go very bad really fast, because if I misalign this design, I think it's going to be so noticeable. Because like I can't physically align it to make sure that it's not going to go off the embossing if it's crooked at all. Cool, love technologies, just spent an hour trying to get this calibration thing to work. But theoretically, if it lines up with this photo, it should align up on that. If it doesn't, I'm gonna be real mad. Yep, I'm sure this is riveting content.
20 minutes later.
See, oh, for the most part, it looks like it's pretty even. Some spots maybe a little off, but pretty good. I don't want to move it because I don't want to recalculate it. Okay, now for the other side. Watch me now mess up the front cover again. So if it could just please be perfect, that would be great. And go. Oh no, it's already not aligned.
Okay, after a quick panic and slight readjustment, I was able to get the cover alignment with something I was happy with, though there is a slight overlay at the top from the first attempt. And then after adding the spine, oh my god, this looked so good on the book cover. Like, I am in love with how this turned out.
It's a shame the original method didn't work out, but at least this one looks pretty darn good. And now just imagine how good it's gonna look when dyed. So let's get started on that, and hopefully I do not mess up this cover now that I'm actually liking how it's going.
I did already have some green dye from a previous book project, and I wanted to test out how it would look on the engraving before I did on the cover. I'm so glad that I did this test because it immediately was not turning out how I wanted.
I'm probably gonna let this dry for a while to see if it gets any lighter, because right now it is super, super dark. To the part where it's even hard to see the engraving. Okay, it's been some time, but we are back to dye once more. After letting it dry, it was still way too dark, and it wasn't the vibe I was going for, so yesterday I ran out to Tandy Leather and just picked out a couple more greens, which was Kelly Green of the same brand and also Forest Green from EcoFlow. And when I tested it on the embossing, while both are definitely better, the Kelly Green is a little bit more of an emerald, while the Forest Green is much more the natural green that I was going for. If they look similar on camera, I swear it looks so different in real life. You're just gonna have to trust me. Also, did I accidentally dye my hands in the process? Yes. Applying the dye can be like such a make or break for a project, and I'm going to admit, I've become very attached to this project. Like, obviously, I always try my best with all my projects, but this one I'm now like, man, I really enjoyed reading The Hobbit, and I want my first copy to now be really special, and I don't want to mess this up. It's looking good, but some of the places are still quite hard to get, like around the nooks in the embossing. And I was going to hold off on this, but I think it's time to pull out my secret weapon, spray can. Probably should have just used this from the start, but it can be kind of messy, so I didn't want to deal with it. But gosh darn it, do I want an even coat. Oh. Mumbo, please don't kill the lizard. Please, no. And here we see the wild Mumbo in her natural habitat on the hunt. Did it outsmart you? Yeah. Oh, the green is such a pretty color, and it's nice and even. And admittedly, it is still a bit on the darker side, but I'm fine with that. I'd rather it be even than lighter, but darker in some areas. Now just to seal it, to make sure the green color does not come off. Go and get a little preview real quick to see what it looks like with the text block in. Probably very similar to before, but green, but that's a good looking book if I do say so myself. But before we can actually lock in the text block in place, there is one more step I want to do, and that is to add some gold accents to the cover. And I'm going to do it in a way that I have not done before. Because in the past, normally when I add any gold designs, they are Cricut iron-on foil. My problem with that foil is it very much looks like just only placed on top of the cover versus like engraved into it. So that's why this time I was so insistent on either stamping or engraving, because this time I would like to try adding it with gold leaf. I mean, from the videos I've seen online, it seems easy enough. You just have to put glue where you want the gold leaf to stick, and then it does. Before I put it on the cover though, I'm going to try it on some test engravings just to see how hard it is to actually get the glue in the design. Okay, so the bottle says let dry and then parentheses 30 minutes. I'm sure that is just a suggestion. Oh, you can just rip that off, okay. Okay, it's kind of there, but not, like, obviously it's missing in a lot of spots. So I'm going to try it again, but this time maybe with a little bit more glue, and also let it sit probably the recommended time, because that might have been my bad.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot better.
Okay, yes, so much better. More glue,
more time to dry, like the instructions said. It doesn't 100% look perfect, but since the rest of the design was like machine made, I kind of like that. Having at least the gold be a little bit rough around the edges makes it feel a little bit more authentic. We're there and back again. I am like holding my breath as I'm trying to stay within the lines. And why didn't I choose like a font size just a few points bigger? Oh my god, it already looks so stinking cool. It's a little bit messy if you look up close, especially to like the lettering, but from a distance, my god, she looks gorgeous. Probably going to take a little break for now, but this is probably going to be the rest of my night, is gold leaf.
There's a slight ramble, and then when you look down, it's like, wow.
A question that I have about the Tolkien lore that I have not been able to figure out so far, and maybe the more dedicated Tolkien fans can let me know if there is more information about this or not. But my question is that I have been curious about since finishing The Hobbit. Did we ever find out what Belladonna Took's adventure was with Gandalf? Or if for certain she did go on an adventure with Gandalf? I guess it doesn't verbatim say that she went on an adventure with Gandalf, but I feel like it's very heavily implied, right? Just says that she is a remarkable hobbit who did not go on any adventures after she became a Baggins. But in the same passage, it also says that Tooks often disappeared on adventures, also implied that Gandalf was part of the reason for that. And I'm very curious, like what level of adventure it would be. Like I did try briefly looking it up, and I was very surprised to see like there's not a whole lot of information about Belladonna, which is very surprising to me because the books are so centered around this family line of hobbits going on their adventures, and there's another generation that we just don't know her story. Like, I don't think it's as big as Frodo taking the ring to Mordor, but was as big as going and fighting a dragon for a dwarven kingdom? Was it smaller? Was it more frequent? Did she go on several? Like, I feel like it probably went well because Gandalf's answer to everything after that is just add hobbits and it'll probably work out fine. And look, I know that there's so much more I need to learn about Middle-earth, but I'm going to be very honest, I couldn't care less about the creation of the rings of power or whatever. I want to know about Bilbo's mom. Like, that just sounds like such another fun story to tell. And say if Tolkien never did write anything, are people allowed to now add on to the Tolkien Middle-earth stories at all? Or is it pretty much whatever Tolkien wrote is in law and cannot be expanded upon? Unless you're Peter Jackson. I don't know. These are the questions that now keep me up at night. I now realize why there are whole channels just dedicated to breaking down Tolkien lore. Okay, the gold accents are adding so much. It's looking so freaking good. For the Lonely Mountain and the dragon, I'm going to kind of try and mimic how it is on Thorne's map by gold leafing the dragon and the secret door, because those are the ones that are actually in color compared to everything else on the map. I like how the gold is more of just like an accent right now and not the entire design. Like, we don't want to be falling into like gold dragon sickness. Okay, right now, Schmog looks a little ugly, so little touch-ups. Gonna be honest,
Didn't think gold leafing was going to take this long. I was like, oh, you just have to paint down some glue, put stuff on top, and it just sticks, it just works, it's great. But from having to carefully apply it, wait the dry time, then actually making sure everything sticks and then cleaning up little overspills. Like at this point, I've gone through all the Hobbit production diaries and I'm still working on this.
Once all the gold leaf was finally in place, I did decide to go over it with the same sealant that I used for leather, which I have used on foil before, and it worked out fine, but with the gold leaf, it did end up dulling the shine of the gold quite significantly, which is kind of disappointing, but still I would rather it be able to withstand years of use than rather it just be shiny on a shelf, so it's fine.
All right, this entire process comes down to the last step of actually gluing in the text block to the bookcase. While simple, it can also be so crucial of whether this is a functional book or not. Literally, all the hard work that we just did on the cover and preserving the text block, it's up at stakes right now. I guess, I don't know if I'm just trying to make a bookbinding video more dramatic than it needs to be. If I use too much glue, it could really warp the end pages. It could sit at like a weird angle or could not open or close all the way. And then worst of all, where if I glue in the text block upside down, I would look a fool. This is real life or death stuff right here. Okay, cover, face down, text block. This is upside down. See, I told you, dangerous stuff. Place it as in the center as we can, along the spine like so. Protective paper. Now time for so much glue. Okay, put that down, line it back up. There we go. Make sure everything is nice and smoothed out. Okay, now to the other side.
But wait. Man, I hope I didn't put the text block in upside down.
All right, it has now been in the press overnight, and I am so excited to see how it turned out. Okay, no moisture got through, that's good. Seems they'll be holding up. I mean, it looks good closed, but moment of truth. Let's see how it opens. Oh yeah, oh, it can open up flat. Oh, the end pages aren't tearing off. The maps are still intact. Like I mentioned before, the thing I tend to struggle with my bookbinds is like I can always make them look pretty, but then sometimes I mess up the spacing in the case, so it doesn't actually function as well as it should. And this one, I was so worried of that happening. So I am very pleased with how this is. I can read this comfortably. I don't feel like it is tearing at the end pages or is about to fall out. This just might be my favorite rebind. Maybe my favorite bookbinding project I've done. I can think of adding one more small detail to it, and then it will be time for the final reveal.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.